Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. Gonna be doing something a little bit different this time. Since I'm making a game, I thought I should show you what I'm doing. And it's kind of interesting. I feel a little dumb because so right here I've opened the repository for the game. This is the Glitch Strikers repository. So usually in the videos where I kind of explain what I've been working on, I'm not specific about what I've been doing. And I realized that all I have to do is look back at the commits in the repository to show exactly what I've done since the last time. So it can be a much more accurate devlog. So this is basically becoming a devlog. And you might be confused about the title of the video. It says GameKid Collection Devlog, and that'll be explained later on in the video. Dependency injection, I talked a little bit about that, but let's just so I use Zenject. It's really cool. If you're using Unity, I would highly recommend checking this out. It's free, and just for fun or whatever, here's a list of some of the other games that are using it, and one of the biggest ones is Pokemon Go. So there's big games using it. Pokemon Go is made in Unity, if you didn't know. Yeah, I've been working on this project or different variations of this project for just a long time, and I sort of became aware of when stuff starts to get complex and it feels like things are harder than they should be. That's when I was started investigating alternative ways to program. That's when I discovered dependency injection. And then I decided to switch to it, and then I sort of feel like this is the final iteration of the code. The code was really strong enough now to build the entire game on. Well, let's just start going through there's this tool called Wise. I just might as well go to their website. I didn't end up using this, but I was looking into it a few months ago just because I just think Unity's audio isn't really that great. It's gotten better than it was before. But just actually the way that you play audio clips and stuff, I never was a big fan of. And there's some plugins for Unity to make up for that. I use Master Audio, but Wise was just something I was looking into because The Witcher 3 uses Wise, by the way. Just because then the audio was more separate from the rest of the game, and it's just so much easier when stuff is separate. So I was looking into Wise because then all the audio in the entire game would have been kind of separate from the rest of it and just make it easier to manage. But I didn't end up using it, but I was experimenting with it a little bit. You can see here I removed Wise. And I've been using experimental builds of Unity because I've been using their 2D tile mapper, and it's been experimental for a long time. So I'm always using some weird version of Unity, but Tile Mapper is finally coming out in the next version of Unity, 2017.2. So then I won't have to use an experimental version anymore. But periodically, there's stuff about me trying to switch to some weird new experimental version. So still, spent a lot of time converting the code. Conversion stuff. So when I switched to using dependency injection, that was just a point where I kind of rewrote all the code. Not every specific thing, but I had a bunch of code, and then I took all of the code out and only brought in stuff that I needed as I needed it. And when I brought it in, I rewrote it to work with dependency injection. So that was the process that I followed, and that's sort of why my code base is like really clean now, because I got rid of stuff that I accumulated over like 5 years. I did some work on attacking, pooling. If you don't know what pooling is, there's this thing called garbage collection. Unity uses C#, and the C# creates what's called a virtual machine, and then the virtual machine it manages its own memory so that you don't have to do manual memory management like you do with C++. But since you're not managing the memory manually, like the virtual machine is managing the memory on its own, but it takes time to clean up. So every time you destroy an object, you're generating garbage. And so if you use pooling, then you're not generating garbage, so you're creating less work for the CPU to operate on every frame. But Unity's going to be upgrading their garbage collector sometime in the next year or so, and that's going to be awesome when they do that. Then you won't have to worry as much about it, but until then you got to try to generate as little garbage as possible. And even then you won't want to generate a lot of garbage. Did some work on character switching. Characters, it's glitch strikers, you switch characters. That was just the code for that. Moving and jumping, started bringing that code over. At one point I spent a lot of time on the palette system, and so the cool thing about using pixel art is you can do like a lot of weird palette stuff, and since Glitch Strikers has glitches and stuff, I was going to do a lot of interesting palette effects. Whoops. And this was, I was trying to think of a generic palette. It has to be limited to 256 colors because of what I'm going to be doing with it, and I can go into more detail with that later, but it generates what's called a lookup texture. I should probably show you that. This is Mecha Boy. Well, let me open the other one. So this is what his texture really looks like. It's got colors on it. And so then what happens is these, when this texture gets imported, it's a sprite sheet, but when you're working with 3D stuff, everything's a texture. So when it gets imported into Unity, then with this palette, it finds the closest color. This palette is actually a guide. These colors aren't actually used in game. It finds the closest color, and then it maps it to that pixel, and so there's 256 of them. I'm gonna have to show us some more detail later, maybe with a separate video. But so then the texture actually becomes, it has one channel. So when you're looking at a color texture, it actually has 4 channels: the red, green, the blue, and the alpha. And so this is an alpha only texture. But then you can swap palettes by, I have it read into this. Let's say he's red. I'll just do a theoretical demonstration. So he's red. Let's just pretend it's this pixel. So then it generates this, and it tells it to just, whatever color is here is the color it will become. So then it would become, wherever that color. This is going terribly. But anyway, that would happen. Okay, it looks in the position. So this is sort of like a guide. This is like telling it where to look for the colors, and then when I change the colors here, they would change everywhere. So all of that would become that color. I didn't have like a demo scene set up because I didn't expect to go into so much detail explaining that. I guess I want to do tutorial videos. I'm always working, so I never really find the time. But I really should. But that specific concept is explained. I'll just show you. It's making stuff look good in Unity. Yeah, this explained. If you want to know more about it, just check out this video. Making stuff look good in Unity, pixel art, palette swapping. He has a really cool video explaining it. The way I do it is more complex because we're doing like glitchy stuff, so there's more possibilities. That's why I'm using 256 colors, even though there's not really 256 colors. Anyway, that was a huge tangent. Sorry about that. But palettes are pretty cool, and I'm gonna be doing some fun stuff with them. Oh yeah, so I did menus. Might as well demo some of that. Oh, so I just wrote a menu system. Mostly did the options, but just a system for displaying menus and changing settings, and some of these settings work. I can demonstrate the music, so you can hear the music. Lower the music volume. Can't hear it anymore. So yeah, did menu system. So that took a little while. Dialogue, or a dialogue system. I'm currently using a plugin, but I don't know if I'm going to keep using it. But sometimes I start out with a plugin, just a plugin that I download on the Unity Asset Store, and then if I want to get going quickly, I'll start with the plugin, and then if I don't like the plugin, then I'll usually just write it myself. Sometimes you can download stuff from the Unity Asset Store just to kind of see how other people approach the same problem, and if their code isn't good enough, then you can just rewrite it or make it do whatever you need it to. So this was a case where there was a cheap one and I just wanted to get going quickly, so I did a dialogue system. Don't worry about what they're specifically saying, it's just one of the possible story ideas. And then the dialogue system also has you could make choices in the dialogue, and then I don't know if I wrote about that. So I did the dialogue system, and then it says I did level select. Interpolation is a thing. It makes everything look smoother. If something's not interpolated, it's gonna look like this. The motion, like, it'll look jittery, whereas if it's interpolated, it's like smooth. And that's a really complex thing. You can look up if you want to learn more about it. You'd want to read this very famous article that everyone in the world, in the game development world, reads. It's called Fix Your Time Step. And that explains how you have a fixed time step for the game, and then you render at a different frame rate, so you can support any frame rate, but the game will always work the same regardless of what frame rate. And since the frame is actually you don't know when the frame is going to be displayed, you interpolate between the positions of the fixed time. The dates are on the right side, so now I'm into July. This was another case where I guess I did a little bit of work on input meaning controllers. But then I did some work on saving, and so that was another case where I downloaded a plugin just to save time if they're cheap. I think I got this one. I usually download it, and then I'm just like, this isn't good enough, or like I could do this way simpler. So that's that happened with this too. I downloaded it, just kind of see how they did it, and I got it on sale. I don't know, I guess I'm cheap. But this is one of the plugins that you can use for saving, but I didn't end up using it. I took a look at how they approached the problem, and then I used JSON. So I had two save files, and it's called JSON. Stands for JavaScript Object Notation, I think. So it's just text. This would be like a really basic save file. Let's just say we have a level called Genesis Mines, and this would just be a really basic save file. You would have it's called a Boolean, which means true or false. You'd say, is that completed? It starts out false. Now when you beat the level and you save your game, then you would just write true. And obviously you do that programmatically, but this is one way to explore the data. But again, this is like a really basic save file, but it was just that I was starting to implement saving data for the game, and then being able to load that data back up. Oh, and then I also had sometimes I write funny stuff when I code, but apparently I was saving this data that says you are dumb. Not you. I must have been talking to myself. And just to show you that, I don't know why. Hurry up. It's taking too long. That's not the good one. And you can actually just open it up in a text editor, and that's what the data looks like. But check out JSON. It's the best data format. Oh yeah, and I accidentally just went here. This is actually the JSON library that I use. Unity's built-in serialization is dumb. It's very limited. I use it for some stuff, but I really like JSON.NET. It makes things a lot easier to load and save. I'll show you some more data in a little while, because there's some other data stuff I'm doing that'll be a better time to explain it. I attempted to upgrade to Unity 2017.2, but it didn't work because there's too many bugs, as you can see here. All right, and then I'll have to start explaining. Oops. Iggy, that's my wife. She's talking to me. Okay, but let's jump into the next part. So, as you can see here, I was rearranging stuff so that I could use the same code in multiple projects. So, now let's talk about the next thing. So what is GameKid collection? What does that have to do with Glitch Strikers? Here's the story. So throughout the whole process of me trying to make the Kickstarter game, I kept trying to make the game smaller and came up with a really cool design, and I talked about that in the last video. But even when I would make the game shorter, we were cutting it down to 10 levels. The problem is then each of those 10 levels has a lot of unique stuff in it, if you're trying to make it a standalone game. So even though it's shorter, it still has tons of content, and each of those levels has to have their own unique content, and we have the character switching and the way the character switching works is really cool, but to make it really good, we would have to spend a lot of time iterating on it, and then that would take a long time. And then I also sort of just had to admit to myself that I don't really have a lot of design experience, but the guy I'm working with, Matt Cap, does have a lot of design experience. So we had this really big meeting where I was kind of explaining to him this problem, and I was saying maybe you should take over designing the game. I mean, he was always helping, but I was sort of the lead. But we came up with a better idea. Something that can give me more design experience. Because at this point, I have all of the technical stuff down. I got the programming down. Like, I can program pretty much anything. So I'm not worried about that part at all. Just the actual designing and making a game that's awesome, that's worth playing. So anyway, let me show you. So when I was talking to Matt, he said he's got this project he's been working on off and on, which is here's a little GIF from it that he posted on Twitter. So it's this collection of small Game Boy games. So I was saying, okay, well, maybe I can help you with this collection, because Matt's not a programmer, he's an artist. He basically has all the skills that I don't have. That's why we work well together, because he has a lot of experience designing and designing stuff, art, sound effects, music, and I can program and put everything together and do all the technical stuff. So he showed me that he has this collection. I checked out some of the games, and we actually had the idea to do this collection first, but combine it with the Glitch Strikers project, do more experimental stuff with it. And it's really quick to make because it's only 4 colors, although we're going to be doing some palette stuff because we're doing like a super Game Boy-ish thing also. And then we're putting in the Glitch Strikers game is going to be like the biggest game in the collection. Probably call it something like Glitch Strikers Micro or something. Then it could actually be a really small game, and there's not as much pressure to make it awesome since it's part of a collection. Or we can also have other games that are based on, like if there's a Mecha Boy game or a Manny Pals game. These would be really small games in Game Boy style. And then since they're Game Boy style, there isn't pressure to make cool shaders and to make the graphics look cool. Even though I know Nintendo is not a big step up from Game Boy. Game Boy has a lower resolution, and there's just less expectations on the graphics. And because Glitch Strikers has glitches, there's also like a lot of the stuff on the glitches it would take a while to make it look cool. But then if we make a standalone Glitch Strikers game after that, the cool thing is we would have all of these small games to draw upon, which makes a lot more sense if you're making like a crossover game. If you're drawing from existing content, it just makes a lot more sense. So at that point, the last thing Matt and I did together was the trailer. And, we didn't have like a clear path for getting the stuff into the game just because we were, just kind of trying to get it done quick, and it was made for a video. So we weren't really that concerned about it at the time. And Matt already has a lot of tools and workflows that he's already used to using. Whereas I was like forcing him to use different tools. This is how we were doing stuff for the trailer. This is a pretty cool program. It's called Pixel Edit. It's not like it's a really cool program for like creating. It's like a walk animation. Let's press play. You see he's walking, you know. You can like draw on it as it's animating. So I think it's pretty cool, but I'm not a pixel artist. And it is actually kind of hard to import. I actually had a pixel edit importer, one that I downloaded as part of another package, and I said, as usual, then I modify it to make it do what I want. Now I'm in the wrong project, so I can't show that. But anyway, I was importing these pixel edit files and generating animations from them. But it wasn't really the best workflow, and there's a lot of stuff that doesn't have like palette swapping. You can't really like. We decided to create our own editor. Well, basically me create an editor for the animations. Well, I'll show you that in a second. I'll show you the other thing first because it's shorter. And then for making levels, for the trailer, I just made all the levels just because I made them in Unity with the tile mapper that's coming in the next version of Unity 2017.2. I have a preview version that has a tile mapper. And so I just was making the levels in Unity, but then Matt can't make the levels unless he becomes part of the Unity project. And then when you bring another person onto the Unity project, everything like explodes. Not really, but it's actually pretty annoying to have multiple people on one Unity project, and I know bigger games need to have that, but since we're a smaller team, it's easier to keep it separate so that just I manage the whole Unity project, and Matt doesn't have any experience with Unity, and it's kind of intimidating, and then I would have to make sure there's no errors in the code, because if he would try to like play the game and there was an error, then it's really complicated. Maybe I'll explain more about it, that specific issue, later. But anyway, what we decided to do, like I said, was use tools that he's more familiar with. So tiled map editor, might as well go to their website for fun. This is a very highly used tile map editor, and he has a very successful Patreon. I only get like $50 a month. He gets 1,408. Yeah, a lot of games use this. Like Shovel Knight is one of the biggest games I know that uses it. But we just decided to use it for simplicity, and since Matt already knows how to use it, and it's pretty easy to import. Just in case you're considering if you want to import tiled, this is the library I used. It's called Tiled Sharp. Remember, when you're using Unity, you don't have to use stuff specifically for Unity. You can also use C# libraries. So this is what I use. I don't actually like using stuff that's specific for Unity. I prefer stuff that's just like C# when I can. And so it was really easy to import. I'll do it quick. So here's the level. This is actually a level from that game that I showed in the GIF, the GIF or the GIF, whatever. I still don't know how to say it. It's called Wizard Kid. That's just tentative title. But anyway, you know, there's the map for it. There's like 3 rooms. And then I run the game. This is the GameKid collection project. Don't worry about the weird border. Don't worry about anything. When you show a game that's in the middle of development, everything looks insane. So anyway, here's the project. You can see it's working perfectly. The animation's looking really good. And then, so you can see that that's the level. And then if I just like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm trying to add stuff, but I guess that's fine too. So if I add stuff and then I go back and I reload it, you can see it added that. So you can see this game's really good. It's done. just finished. But it has all the other rooms too. By the way, I'm just showing you that we can import levels from tiled. And that was really quick and easy to do. It didn't take long. I'm not fully done yet, but this was like a day or two of work. So that's one thing we changed. Since I'm pretty well versed in Unity, I was like, well, I'll just make my own editor for you to create animations, since there isn't really like a sprite animation editor that does everything that I want it to, and that we're going to eventually need, because I started out with really basic features and then I'm going to be adding more. All right, so this is the editor, pretty basic right now. I've only been working on this for about 2 weeks, but it already got the basic stuff. I just need to do sprite animation right now. So you can create a sprite sheet, and right now it's just preloading this test thing. This is from a game from GameKid collection called Animal Boat. That's a tentative title. If you're well versed in game history, you might know that this is kind of poking fun at an existing game, and I kind of like to make stuff that's kind of funny. This is a really simple game poking fun at another game, but you can create an entity and then you give the entity sprites. Right now you have to enter in the sprite stuff manually, but you can see now I just sliced it. If you don't know what slicing is, it means you like take a section of a texture and then you can then use that section, and this section is then known as a sprite, and then you would like create an animation, which I don't know, my animation editor is not really doing much right now, but I just loaded a file that I was already working on, and here's an animation like actually working, but I don't even have a timeline in yet, but might do that later. But anyway, right now it just lets you slice up textures into sprites and then animate those textures with the bare basics right now. But it does work. And then for fun, told you I'd show you a little bit more, some more data. So let's take a look at the file format, just for fun. You can actually see that if you remember the assets window, this is how it's laid out the same way. You got entities and sprites, and tells you the sprites where they are. But just if you're curious, like this is how you save data and then reload the data for later as a list of the sprite sheets and animations. The animations can have multiple layers. I think that kind of brings us up to speed. And then here's the repository for the editor. That's just kind of this from start to finish, just the stuff that I did. If you're curious, you can just see the order that I did it in or whatever. So that's our asset import pipeline. Kind of really simplifies things for us and just makes it so that Mac can use some basic tools so he can just work fast and not have to worry about messing around with Unity or dealing with like weird bugs. And it also lets our data be loaded from outside of Unity, which once you just become more accustomed to game development, you kind of realize the value of just the more you can separate things, the better it is. I'll probably be extending my editor to be able to do more stuff like animate colliders and do some palette swapping and some palette animations. There aren't really any tools that do that kind of thing, so I don't think there's really anything else to show. I think that sums it up pretty good, and I think this is a better way to kind of explain what I've been doing, gives you more of a behind the scenes kind of look, and you can learn about game development in the process. And this is kind of cool because this game is just kind of, you'll kind of get to see the whole process of this game being built, since, as we just finished or are just about done with the asset pipeline, then we'll start building the actual games, like the code to run the games and stuff. A lot of it already exists, but I'll be combining stuff, leveraging a lot of my existing code, and I can show you how I do that, or at the very least, you'll get more devlogs like this. But please do let me know in the comments, like how, I don't know, just what you want to see. And I really do enjoy making videos. I never feel like it's okay for me to spend much time on making videos, just because I feel like all my time should be on making the game. But maybe I should be putting a little bit more time toward them, like explaining things could be fun and interesting. So just let me know in the comments. But I will definitely be doing this from now on instead of just doing the talking, because there's always going to be a lot of stuff to show now. Since my code is like at a nice place now, most of the progress will be visible. Whereas when you're starting out, the progress it's not as easy to see, because you have to when you make games, you have to make a lot of mistakes in order to move forward. That's just a big part of it. It's very messy. You kind of you always feel like, hopefully you feel like you're on the right path, but then you just kind of like hit something that you weren't expecting, and then you're just kind of like trying to get around it, like, oh, how do I move forward past this? And it's a really interesting process. It's very complex, and I kind of like sharing the process with people, and I've always wanted to, but now I feel like it's kind of the right time to just have like a consistent devlog, so you can kind of see the game unfold. And I already talked to Matt about it. He's pretty okay with showing most of the stuff. If I'm ever showing anything sensitive, I could just say like, this might be a spoiler, and then we'll figure it out. I kind of say this at the end of a lot of my videos now, but this process has been like as kind of unexpected for me as it probably is for you. This isn't really the path that I expected to take. It's pretty hard to kind of realize the nuances of what makes game development complicated unless you're kind of like in the thick of it, kind of dealing with it from day to day, seeing all the small problems that come up. It's really hard to just kind of convey them to another person without experiencing it yourself. So I never realized how this process would be so, I don't know, just kind of twisting and turning and just kind of going in places that I didn't expect. But at least now I got all the technical stuff down, so I could just kind of focus on the design and hopefully see this thing through to the end. The path has been very long and strenuous, but again, I said before, the light, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I just feel like every day, every line of code I type is getting closer and closer to the finish line. And the product may not be exactly what I expected or we expected, but even if this is the first product, that is just the beginning. It's just the first step. So I thank everybody for supporting me along this journey, and hope you've grown along with me and kind of continue to, I don't know, learn new stuff. And I'm looking forward to being just a lot more transparent about the process. And I really wish I had the idea of of going through the repository at the end of each kind of stretch of work. But that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be able to see the game unfold, and ask questions along the way. I'll try to answer the questions, and let's see where this thing goes, and let's reach the end together. If you do want to help, I do have a Patreon. That's the best way to help. But again, no pressure. I'm just saying, if you do want to help, that's a really good way to help. But there are a lot of other really, really talented creators that you can also support on Patreon. I really like the YouTube people that do like the heavy analysis of games. Like I think Mark Brown is one of them. He does the Game Maker's Toolkit. Game analysis is something I've always been really interested in. But anyway, I will stop rambling. I will let you continue your day, and I hope you enjoyed this. And again, please leave feedback about how to improve this, and hopefully I can figure out how to do it without taking too much time away from direct development. Anyway, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Thank you.